What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show here on Sherdog.com. And today I want to look ahead to the top 5 fights, or my favourite 5 fights in the world of mixed martial arts in January. Obviously, we're a little bit later to the fights coming this year or this month even, because it's been the holiday season, the Christmas time, and people haven't been putting on fights, which is absolutely fantastic. I hope it stays that way every year. Do you know what? We've always said for years, like, MMA doesn't really have an off season, but it feels like we've decided like the first week in January is going to be our de facto off season, which is great. And I would actually rather like the last week in December and the first week in January be the de facto off season. But anyway, we won't be picky and choosy. But yeah, this is the thing I've done before years ago, looking ahead to the top 5 fights. And do you know what? I've always enjoyed it. And let me know if you enjoy this. And maybe it's a thing I'll do every month, because I feel like in MMA, and the reason I'm doing this more so than anything else is, in MMA it feels like we are just like, what's on next week? You know? We're like, oh, there's a one championship card on, we'll watch that. It doesn't matter what's on in 3 weeks' time. You know, oh, there's the UFC card on, we'll watch that. Who's fighting this week? We come to next week's card and be like, oh, I didn't even know that fight was happening. So this is kind of one of those things where I'm just going to pick out a few fights, and ones that we're looking forward to, ones you might think, oh yeah, I heard that fight was happening, but I didn't realize it was happening in, 17 days or in, whatever it might be. So that's what I'm here to do. Now, obviously, it's a little bit later this month because there isn't many fights and all that. So, kind of slim pickings this month, but hopefully next month and the rest of the month it'll be a lot better. But I've picked out 5 fights here that I'm very much looking forward to, and I'm just kind of going to give my initial thoughts on them. Obviously, I'll probably be covering them before and after and on many different platforms over the next 3 or 4 weeks. So, yeah. My initial thoughts on them, I suppose, on why I am excited for more than anything else, and why maybe we can get through a fight night because we have a good fight coming up, if you get me, or why we can a reason to watch a card, or a reason to get excited about MMA. Sometimes it feels like MMA can be a struggle. It's like you're looking at I've been looking at one of the fight night cards there, and I'm like, oh God, are we really subjugating ourselves to this? Is this? Do we really need to watch this? Like that? I feel like that's a thing that's happening more and more in MMA all the time. And you know what? Me personally, and I would say a lot of people as well, and hopefully a lot of the people listening to this, are kind of looking for ways out of it. Like, I don't want to be negative about MMA. I don't want to think about MMA, my watching of MMA anyway, and like, oh, it's a chore. I want to be excited about it. I want to be like, yes, this fight's coming up. I can't wait for this fight. I can't wait to watch this fight. And I think there are lots of fights like that every month. And if we maybe not always concentrate on that, but like we take one show a month and we concentrate on the great fights coming up, I don't think that's overkill. I don't think that's too much. So, bit of positivity. We'll see if it happens again next month. It's happening for January anyway, lads. We'll see. It's not always possible. There's only 3 shows, we can't get everything in, but it's something I really, I want to do. As I said, I used to do it before. I enjoy doing it, and I'm, definitely looking forward to these fights anyway for January. Let's get into it. First fight I'm looking forward to, and okay, spoiler alert, there's 3 fights here on one card, so 3 fights on UFC 283, which is the biggest card of the month by far, and obviously, it's a month with only kind of 2 weeks because of everyone taking a bit of time off, but there are a lot of very good fights on that card, but 3 I'm really, really looking forward to, and I'm going to give you 2 from 2 other cards as well coming up. So, January 21st, UFC 283, Glover Teixeira versus Jamahal Hill. Now, 2 of my favourite fighters, if I'm being honest, in Glover Teixeira and Jamahal Hill. And people probably say, oh, what are you talking about? 2 of your favourite fighters. Go ahead, that can't be the case. But it actually is, and I'll tell you the reason why, right? For Glover Teixeira, I feel like for years Glover is a guy who's been massively underrated. Like, I've talked about him on different podcasts, different places for years about how we don't respect his all-around game. Right, I think at different times people have respected his striking and respected his tactical nous, and maybe even at times respected his wrestling, although never enough in my opinion. But I've felt for maybe 3 or 4 years now, and maybe not even that long per se, because I think He's a guy who's become a better fighter throughout his career. But I feel like it happens a lot in sports, but you reach a point in your career where you have developed this game and people are still analysing you on the game you had 6 months ago or 2 years ago or 5 years ago, right? And that to me was Glover Teixeira, right? So people were analysing Glover Teixeira and they're saying, oh, this guy's a good striker. You know, if he can hit you with a big strike, he can knock you out. And other than that, nah, you know, people can get to him or people can beat him. And look, people have beaten him and they have gotten him down throughout the years. But to me, that was completely wrong because Glover's wrestling and grappling just became such a weapon over the last few years. He almost turned to a completely different fighter. Now, maybe that was an intelligent move on him, considering he wouldn't be fighting John Jones again, more than likely, or, you know, Cormier was leaving the division and all of that. So maybe he thought, look, if I'm a better, we've seen what's happened. Look at Cormier was a better grappler than all of these. He beat him with that. Jones, to an extent, as well, beat him with that. But there's a lot of strikers in the division. There aren't many great wrestlers. I've been improving my wrestling. It's to a point where it's really good. If I start using it more, start using it as a weapon behind my strikes, it can turn me into a different sort of fighter. And it has. Now, whether that is exactly like I said it there, whether it was a thing he thought out and adjusted his game to fight that way, whether it was something naturally that happened, whether it was something that was just like, okay, I'm good at this now, let's do it more. I don't know. But in any case, it doesn't really matter because that's what's happened. He has become a more well-rounded fighter, tactical fighter. His tactics have become more well-rounded. What he does, his production has become more well-rounded. That's the word, his production. What he produces inside the cage is not just boxing, it's not just kickboxing, it's not just wrestling or jiu-jitsu, it's all around. He puts it well tactically together, and that's the type of fighter I love. I see, like, it's funny. I watch fighters here in Ireland. There's a fighter the other day, Solomon Simon. He's making his pro debut coming up here next week, I think it is. Another fight to watch out. He's a good guy coming up, so maybe I'll add in a sixth fight. Maybe I should add in an Irish fight. But anyway, and I remember, I think it was his second amateur fight I watched, and I was like, oh, this guy's good. And then, you know, you see him coming up all the way. Not just necessarily him, but some fighters fall by the wayside. Some fighters end up going to Cage Warriors, a Bellator, maybe even a guy like Ian Gary, who I saw as an amateur fighting in the UFC. Or James Gallagher, who I saw as an amateur fighting, you know, ranked in Bellator now. Or Sinead Cavan, or Liam McCourt, whoever it might be. I think it's really, really cool to see that improvement from a young age to a starting pro to a pro to the top of their career to retirement even. And for Glover Teixeira, he's a guy who, now I haven't seen him as an amateur and all of that, but I have seen those improvements happening. And when you see those, I love that. I've always loved that in any sport. You know, watching Man United down through the years, watching my Limerick hurlers here do it. I love watching guys coming through thinking these guys have potential, and then they meet it, as I'd be hearing my microphone here. Let's get it off. That's one of my favourite things. And Glover is a weird one because it's happened later in his career, but it doesn't matter. It does not matter. Those improvements still came. The brilliance and beauty in his game has still come. And that's why he's one of my favourite fighters. Now, for Jamahal Hill, he's a guy who, and a lot of people who listen to my stuff will know that I have been calling that Jamahal Hill will be a champion for a good few years now. Like, I really, really, really believe in this guy's ability. I really believe in this guy's ability. And I went searching for tweets there the other day to prove myself right, to say, oh, I called it. You know? And I found one. And what the tweet basically said was, and I actually stand by this, it wasn't his last fight, it was the fight before, whichever fight that was, I can't remember now off the top of my head, but I tweeted and said, right, Jamahal Hill probably has like another 5 years of improvements to make, and he could be champion right now. Something to that effect. And I stand by that, and then, like, obviously that's the case. I don't think anyone could say Jamahal Hill can't beat Glover Teixeira here, so he could become the champion right now. Will he? We'll see on January 21st, right? But I think Jamahal Hill is one of those guys you see coming through. And I don't know, maybe a lot of people actually haven't done this or been as excited as I am about it. There's other guys say, like, even like an Umar Nurmagomedov, who's one of the fights happening this week. He's not in my top five, but he fighting very well. Or the other, even Makhachev or Habib back in there, or even McGregor, or Ciel Gagnon on the way up, or Francis Ngannou on the way up. everyone was talking about him being like a champion or championship potential or being really good, or maybe even the opposite. Oh, this guy's not good enough for what. I never felt Jamahal Hill really had that. And I honestly don't know why. I really, really, really don't know why. And now you could probably say, oh yeah, well, Sean, he got a title shot and he didn't deserve it. Fair enough, right? Fair enough. I think he would have got to this position anyway, right? I think he's that good. And honestly, I predicted my predictions for 2022 that Jamahal Hill would be a champion. And people are probably saying it's early now. I said it a year ago that he'd be a champion. And I said it way before that as well, that I thought he would be a champion. I said it the night Paul Craig broke his arm, that I still thought he'd be a champion. That's how much I believe in Jamahal Hill, right? That's just me watching fighters, having watched fights for 10 years and thinking that maybe I might be right, I might be wrong. Absolutely. I'm not stupid enough to think I'm always right, but I know a good fighter when I see one. I know a talented guy when I see one. And I can, as I say all the time, especially about like up and comers, it doesn't always work out for talented people. Some people buy into that, you know? Some people, I'm the best fighter in the world. The next thing you face Glover Teixeira, you face Yuri Prochazka, you get knocked out twice in a row and you're gonzo. Or else some people think, right, I have to prove I'm the best fighter in the world. It ups their game. They train as hard as they ever had, and then they beat Glover Teixeira, beat Yuri Prochazka, and everyone that comes in front of them. What's going to happen? I don't know. I really don't know. But I think, do I think Jamahal Hill has the ability to do what I just said? Yes. I really, really do. I think he is brilliant. I think he can hit hard. I think he can wrestle. I think he's all around so good, but has a lot of areas to improve on as well. Very athletic, strong, hits hard, big. Everything you need to be a champion in that division. And when we talk about the fight then, and obviously we'll break this fight more, but this show is about the reason why I'm excited for these fights. And though it's almost two individual reasons why I'm excited for these fights. For this fight. It's almost two individual reasons. And maybe I'll just leave it at that more than anything, because there'll be plenty of people breaking down the fight and I'll do that and everyone will do that. But I can't wait to see these two guys fight for the title in the main event. One who's obviously had the chance and had the title before, and another for the first time. Cannot wait. All right, let's move on. I spent nearly half the show's time on one fight, lads. And so it's gone well. The next one, and this fight I'll have talked about as well. I'll have a preview out for the card, but it's on 1 on Prime 6 on January 13th. Stamp Nong Fairtex against Anissa Meksen. And now, this isn't technically MMA, but it is a bit of MMA. It's a mixed rules fight on one championship. So it is 3 minutes Muay Thai, 3 minutes 3 minutes Muay Thai, 3 minutes MMA, 3 minutes Muay Thai, 3 minutes MMA. So 4 3-minute rounds, 12 minutes, and I cannot wait. If anyone saw Demetrius Johnson against Rodtang, it was the same rules as that, if I'm not mistaken, and I cannot wait. Now, Stamp Nong is another person who I have great time for. I love her style. I think she's really good. Very young in her career still. She lost to Angela Lee there. Was it last year? It was last year. And she got that fight a bit quickly. I think she will get back. I think they'll fight again this year. If I'm being honest, now maybe they won't. Maybe it'll be 2024. But she will get back, and I think she will win a title again in the future. But she came over to MMA. I think Rich Franklin kind of discovered her fighting in Muay Thai and thought she'd be good at MMA and brought her over, and she fought in the One Challenger Series thing that they have and all of that. Got like an 8-second knockout, just absolutely destroyed her opponent. And she's been so entertaining as a character, as a fighter and all of them. It's been absolutely great. And now she is taking this fun fight. Now, I'm very interested in this, right? Because you look at someone like Stamp, and you think, right, she's this really good up-and-coming pro who could be your next Angela Lee, who could be your next superstar, who might take the mantle from Angela Lee or whatever it might be at that weight class. But you're putting her in this risky fight against Meksen, who's a brilliant Muay Thai specialist, and you're risking it. And not only from one championship's point of view, from the coaching point of view and all of that. And I'm 50-50 on that, whether it's a good idea or not, but I am 100% down for this being a fun fight. because the one with Demetrius and Rodtang was really, really fun, and I think this will be too. I watched Meksen fighting last year in a Muay Thai matchup, and this was announced, I think, straight afterwards, or maybe a little bit before it, and I'm like, oh, sign me up for that, because she's a really good attacking, go-forward fighter, and Stamp is really fun as well. And the one thing I'm very interested in with this, right? So Demetrius fought Rodtang. Rodtang is this unbelievable kickboxing Muay Thai guy. And Demetrius, his whole thing was, I'm going to fight with him in the first round, but get through it, take him down, destroy him in the second round, and win against MMA. This one will be a little bit different, I think, because Stamp has fought in Muay Thai before. I think Stamp will think she can win in the first round in Muay Thai, never mind get to the second round of MMA. And I also think that Stamp isn't necessarily going to say, all right, we're MMA now, I'm going to take this down and submit her. She's not that type of fighter. I think she's one submission win. She's good on the ground, absolutely. But in my opinion, I think this is probably going to go 4 rounds. I think it's going to be 4 rounds of stand-up, 2 of which are Muay Thai, 2 of which are MMA. And that's something like we've never seen before. Honestly, like, this is a fight like we have never seen before. And that's why I'm so interested in this. I am really, really interested in this fight. And I really get, this might be the fight I'm most looking forward to this month, honestly. I've become a big fan of One Championship over the last year, covering all their cards and stuff. They just put on fun stuff, right? You can take all your good fights and all that, and I love all the good fights, but give me a good fight that's a fun fight as well, or a fun event, and I lap that up. Absolutely lap it up. Absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. And I can't wait for this fight. I really can't. Like, it's one of those ones as well, right? Where, and I spoke about this in the preview, so please listen to the preview as well, but imagine you get to the 4th round and it's been 3 rounds standing. And Stamp is like, I'm just going to stand with her for the whole fight. Like, does she change things up in that 4th round and try to take the fight to the ground and try to get a submission, try to finish it there? Does she do that? Like, what happened? That's one thing that I'm really, really interested in, to seeing if Stamp fights this in a fun manner rather than a tactical manner, if you get me. I am very interested to see that. So let's all tune in and let's find out. Let's find out. Right. The next fight I'm going to go is back to UFC 283 on January 21st, and it is Paul Craig versus Johnny Walker. And there's a few fights in this card, obviously, and maybe we'll go through some of them here in a minute. But the reason I went for this one is Paul Craig is in a very interesting situation here, right? Because he was on a great run. Okay, he lost the fight or two. And he had some win. He had a win over Ankalaev. He had a win over Jamahal Hill, who's fighting for the title. And if he can go in here and beat Johnny Walker on the same night that Jamahal Hill possibly wins the title, with the fact that Prochazka is out, with the fact that Ankalaev, who did Ankalaev fight? My God almighty, Blachowicz. The two of them just had a title fight, which Dana White, I didn't think it was a stinker, right? That was a good fight, but Dana White thought it was a stinker and went to a draw and didn't get us a champion. They've had their title shots, really. If Paul Craig goes in here, beats Johnny Walker, and before the fight even happens, right, say, Jamahal Hill, I broke your arm once, I'm going to break it again. You win that title, I want to fight you. If he was to do that, right, and Paul Craig is the type of guy who could do that, I could see that fight happening, right? I could see that fight happening. I really, really could. Now, a lot of people probably listen to this and go, what are you talking about, Sean? Look at his record. Look, Paul Craig is not in that conversation at the moment or whatever. And you might be right. You might be right. But what if you're not right? What if you're not? And also, can Paul Craig beat Johnny Walker? That's one thing I'm very interested in. I like Johnny Walker, obviously he's fighting out of Ireland now, so I maybe have a little bit of a vested interest. We could have an Irish MMA champion here in 2023. But I've always been a fan of Johnny Walker's style, and I love how Johnny Walker has also adjusted his style, and he's adjusting his style in real time. We usually don't see it, and a little bit like Glover, I suppose, in terms of adjusting the style, not fighting a similar style to Glover, but you know what I mean, adjusting his style. Like, one fight he fought, he was too outlandish. Next fight he fought, he was too safe. Then he got knocked out by Jamahal Hill. It's like to find that middle ground, and he found it. Was it Kutalaba he fought, if I'm not mistaken? where you can find that middle ground. Like, if Johnny Walker can do that, imagine, maybe he's another guy we have preconceived notions of Johnny Walker. But like, if Walker can put his power and athleticism game with his more controlled tactical game, that could be a legitimately very good fighter. Legitimately very good fighter. If he could put the two of those things together. The hardest thing in MMA to do is put those two things together. So it's by no means a given. But if he can do it, I don't think anyone would disagree with that, would they? Maybe I'm wrong. Like, absolutely, you maybe your call will be, or your opinion will be, Johnny Walker will never do that, and that's absolutely a valid opinion. I could not disagree with that. But the opinion that, like, if he was able to put those two things together, could he be a legitimately top fighter? I don't think that's beyond the realms of possibility at all. Like, I've always said that for years. Like, there's guys, RDA is always the example I give, right? A guy with a game like that who can be tactical but is a very good athlete as well and hits hard can always switch things around. Like, Drew Dober is another guy I always looked at and was like, this guy, okay, he's a little bit older now. Maybe at the lighter weights it's not the best in terms of an example, but he went 3-0 last year after losing a couple of fights because he's a very good athlete, throws very hard. If a thing can turn, if you go on a right run, if you get the right I suppose tactical nous to go with everything else you have, you can become a really good fighter. And that could happen for Johnny Walker. It really could. So this is a fight where I think it'll either be a step in that direction for Johnny Walker with a win, or it could be a massive, massive opportunity for Paul Craig to vault himself up into a place where maybe Paul Craig never thought he himself could be, or a lot of people thought he could be. That's why I'm very interested in that fight. Really, really interested in it. Right, next fight I'm interested in. This is a rematch, and it's KSW 78 on January 21st, and it's Michal Materla versus Kendall Grove. Actually, just before we did this, I went and I watched our first fight, and by God, it was a very good fight. It was in a ring, which was interesting as well. So maybe it was a little bit different. Now, you know, Kendall Grove is a bit longer to do it. He's been around for a good while now at this stage, but like, the reason I'm interested in this fight is I think it makes a lot of sense, if you get me. Because, you know, Materla is coming off of the loss to Pudzianowski, the big knockout loss. You know, he's at 40 fights now in his career. He's 38 years of age. You know, he's gone over and he's had the fights over in the EFM. He fought Soldic in KSW. He's had some big wins. He's lost, you know, the big ones in the last while to Scott Ascom and Soldic and Pudzianowski. You know, to look at Kendall Grove, who's, you know, a similar amount of fights, similar age, 40 years of age. You know, he won his last fight, I suppose, back in 2019 in mixed martial arts. Anyway, he's been fighting bare knuckle and different things. Different things since, but and you know, he was in Bellator, didn't have the greatest run, lost to Jal Salter and Shlemenko and things back in 2016, 17, 18. He hasn't been fighting regularly at all. But look, so the two reasons I am looking forward to this fight, and I think it makes sense, is one, it's a rematch of a very good and interesting fight, which Materla won but had issues in because Kendall Grove is long and he hits hard. He absolutely bursted his nose in that one. And the other reason, I think, is because Kendall Grove is a little bit older now. He is a little bit, he is a little bit past his prime. He is a guy who I think Materla can win against. And you know what? Materla needs a win. And the reason Materla needs a win is because he is one of their big stars. You know, they've lost Soldic now. Pudzianowski and Khalidov are both coming towards the end of their careers. You know, they obviously fought in that mammoth main event not too long ago. Maybe those rematches are there for him. Maybe the Khalidov fight is there. Maybe the Pudzianowski rematch is there for Materla as well. But I think they need to kind of rescue Materla as one of their stars. It's a guy who's been around for a long time. It's a fight that makes sense. It was a fight that was close before, and it could be another fun fight. So that's why I'm looking forward to it. Like, there are some good fights on this KSW card coming up. There's always fun fights. I'm sure we'll have a preview of it. Manikowski is on it. Romanowski is on it as well. But there's nothing like a KSW card with Materla. There's nothing like a KSW card with Kaladov. There's nothing like a KSW card with Pudzianowski. Or, you know, a couple of others who you could name as well, and a couple of stars that are rising in the promotion. And I think sometimes, and one of the main reasons I picked this as well is, sometimes we forget that, like even me here in Europe, and I'm looking at my guy Sean Ninny here, who is a great guy covering all of the Eastern European and Polish MMA especially, and you know, that is a great resource to help out with those cards. For me, looking forward to it, but also the coverage he gives as well is absolutely great. And hopefully in Ireland that I, myself and the other lads over with Severe MMA and other places will do the same. But it's probably the most underreported, underappreciated part of MMA, I would say. And I would try to help and make that not the case, and putting it as a fight here is probably one of the reasons to do that. But as I said, when it is one of those big names on top of a card, it makes it special, and I think this will be as well. So I'm going for that. Right, and number 5, the 5th fight I'm going for here is oh, what a fight. Deiveson Figueirdo versus Brandon Moreno. And look, this is, do you know what? Sometimes in MMA we get in our own way. Right, sometimes we get in our own way in mixed martial arts, and we really, and do you know what, I hate that, right? Because you look at this fight, you look at it, and you think, UFC 256, we had a draw. 2020, we had a draw. UFC 263, Brandon Moreno won. UFC 270, Deiveson Figueirdo won. Right? UFC 270 was in January of 2022, the 22nd of January, and this fight has happened the 21st of January 2023. Why, oh why did it take a year for this fight to happen? Why did it take a year? And Moreno's gone out and he won it was the interim title, didn't it? Yeah, against Kai Kara France and all that. Absolutely, Figueiredo hasn't fought, and maybe there was an injury or whatever it might be. But why? Like, the UFC is supposed to have been designed for fights like this to happen, so we wouldn't have to wait a year like boxing and other sports for it, right? So that's my complaint. But the fight is happening, so that's grand. I'll take it. But this fight, this should be one of the most built up fights we've ever had in MMA. This should be the main event. This should be the main event. That's my fly never die. Everyone knows I love the flyweight division, but this should be the main event. This is a absolutely cracking fight. I think the closer I get to it, maybe I'll do a little bit of a deeper dive in it or something like that, and go back and watch all the other fights, because you know, this, as I said, this is a set out to stall. This fight isn't happening from when I'm recording now, another 16, 17 days, 15 days maybe. So, oh God almighty, I can't wait for it. I really, really can't wait for it. Like, the thing as well, this is, right, I have this saying, I love to say it because of all the up-and-coming fighters, but also like the prospects. We want the best fighting the best when they are the best, right? A draw, a win, a loss for both men. Like, you could not have more of the best fighting the best when they are the best than these two fighters fighting each other. This is it. This is the apex of our sport. This is two guys going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. This is Real Madrid versus Barcelona. This is, you know, Man City, as much as it pains to say me, against Liverpool over the last few years. You know, this is Juventus versus AC Milan or whatever it might be. This is our sports equivalent of that, and maybe we don't recognize that, right? And maybe we don't say that because it's the flyweights and we're like, oh, it's not John Jones, it's not Conor McGregor. These are legitimately brilliant fighters, both at the top of their games, both really evenly matched, going in there, putting it all on the line against each other for four times, and one will emerge. I love it. I absolutely love it. Sign me up. We can break down the fight and all afterwards, and we will. And I'm sure, you know, Shilly and Duffy, the guys, do a great job of breaking down all the UFC cards as well. And I'm sure I'll talk about it as well. But this is a type of fight, right, where we can do all the breakdowns we want, and it'll be, I'm sure the breakdowns will be brilliant, and the fight will be brilliant as well. But just the thought about it, the amount of mental effort these two guys have put into each other. What was the first day? Let me see again. December 2020. It feels longer do you know what? It feels longer. We're in 2023 now. It's only 2 years. It feels longer. But to spend 2 years of your life concentrating on one guy, and for both of them, majestic. I know, obviously, Moreno. Actually, I wonder the fact that Moreno had Kai Kara France to distract him for a while. I wonder, is that a good or a bad thing? It'd be interesting. I'd be interested to see it. But yeah, I cannot wait for those fights. I really, really cannot wait for those fights. And I think like that could be a fight of the year. It really could be a fight of the year. And I think if it is a fight of the year contender, it'll go down as the greatest quadrilogy in MMA history. And it should. So yeah, that's kind of it. I suppose there are another few fights to mention. Maybe Aun Nasang against Galvao over at KSW. Over at one on Prime. I mentioned a couple of the KSW fights. There's an Invicta fight as well on the 18th of January. The bantamweight title's up for grabs there. Tanisha Tennant, who my guy Spencer Kite talks a lot about. She's a very, very good fighter. She's fighting Talia Bernardo's Serena J. Jesus against Olga Rubin is on that as well. And Ireland's own Katie Saul is also on that card. So that's probably the best Invicta card, I would say, in a good long while. So that's very interesting as well. The one UFC card I left out is the Fight Night card coming up here on the 14th of January. Gaslam and Imavov. Not massively looking forward to anything on that, to be honest. The one fight I would say that the two fights I would say on that I was looking forward to, I mentioned already, Umar Nurmagomedov versus Hannibal Solas. That's a real fun fight. I like Punahele Soriano as well. Punahele Soriano. Why do I ruin his name? He's fighting Roman Kopylov. That could be a good fight. Kelvin Vieira, an important fight, not a great fight that I would be looking forward to. But yeah, I like those fights as well. There's a couple of LFA cards coming up this month as well, and there's a lot on that UFC 2A3 card. There's I believe, is it this month? Maybe it's into February, the PFL. No, there is a PFL card starting the Challenger Series, but nothing major on that as of yet. But yeah, look, that big UFC 2A3 card. There's a lot more on that. Shogun is on it in his apparent retirement fight. Andrade versus Murphy as well. Gilbert Burns against Magny. There's a lot of fun fights. Terence McKinney is back. My guy Gilton Almeida against Shami is on the card. There's a lot to look forward to. But my top 5 fights of the month, just me personally, these are not the best fights. These are not the your fights. These are my fights. These are fights I'm looking forward to. Get me excited for the month. Glover Teixeira versus Jamal Hill. Stamp Nong Fairtex against Anissa Meksen in the mixed rules fight. Paul Craig against Johnny Walker, the Celtic Clash, I'm going to call it. Michal Materla versus Kendall Grover of KSW, and Deiveson Figueirdo against Brandon Moreno. I leave it there. My name is Sheehan for Sherdog.com. I'll see you all next time.